You ever wondered or thought about how counterproductive we behave when we're really stressed? When we're overwhelmed and we can't seem to get anything done and we're being pulled in all these different directions, our typical response is to try to do more, which leads to us even failing further. Now, some of us may manage to pull through, but I don't think our mental health will be in great shape by doing that. The whole process, if you look at it, is really counterproductive. So I'm going to talk a bit about how to maybe have a healthier response to stress. And I'm just going to start out by talking a bit about what the stress response is and what's happening to your nervous system. Basically, some type of threat is perceived by your amygdala. It sends a signal then, and keep in mind this happens just in less than a second. This is much faster than our cognitive functioning would work in terms of our executive functioning area. This bypasses the frontal lobe area, the executive function area, and goes straight to this. Amygdala gets triggered, perceives a threat, sends the signal to the hypothalamus, which then releases signals other parts of the body to release about 64 different chemicals. Some of them you're aware of, a lot of different hormones. Cortisol is released, adrenaline's released. Basically, the way we look at it is the nervous system is broken down into two parts. The sympathetic, which is what we sometimes refer to it as the gas pedal that excites the system. And then there's the parasympathetic, which acts as sort of the brake to slow you down. So obviously in this situation, when you're getting a stress threat response, your system is being excited, it's being ramped up for fight or flight. Now, the challenge here, and the point to remember is your brain doesn't necessarily understand the difference between you going into a meeting where you're not prepared in front of a VP or something like that, or some higher ups in the company, and a wild animal chasing you in a sense. These are both threats. And sometimes the brain is not very good at understanding the difference between something that can kill you and something that would be uncomfortable. And this is really key. So the system gets triggered. It excites your nervous system. About 64 different chemicals are released. And keep in mind, those chemicals stay in your system for 5 to 6 hours. So that's important. You don't function well when those chemicals are in your system. This happens, and then as things calm, as there's the intensity of the threat lessens a bit, the hypothalamus will sort of observe and keep monitoring if the threat is still present. And so if the threat is still present, it triggers something called the HPA axis, which continues to respond to this perceived threat. And the reason I mention that is what we consider to be chronic stress is not so much that you're in this kind of adrenaline released sort of hyper sort of state all the time. Some people could be. But it's more that the HPA axis is being triggered, so it's kind of a sort of a stress response that's being triggered, which still is not good, but it's not sort of to the overwhelmed sort of fight or flight state. And the reason I'm mentioning this is this HPA axis will be functioning if there's a perceived threat. Now that perceived threat typically can be your thoughts. If I'm worried about a big meeting tomorrow, if I have a project due today, if I've had a huge fight with my partner and they're talking about breaking up with me, whatever it is, I can still be in this heightened state. And a lot of people, quite honestly, especially people that I meet, are in this kind of heightened stress response state most of the time, which we all know is very unhealthy. The problem can be similar to what the first problem was I mentioned. I'm very stressed all the time. I know it's not good for me, which makes me more stressed, and I just keep doing more to try to get out of this stressful situations. There again, as I'm saying earlier, this is not rational, this is not logical. The logical thing to do is to slow down and get out of this stress response. But how do I do that when I'm so incredibly stressed with all that's going on? I'm going to show you some little exercises you can do that will help with this. But I just wanted people to kind of understand. The other thing that's really important to grasp here is that it's not just that you're in fight or flight or you're in a calm state. The nervous system is triggering. It actually has a lot to do with your cognitive functioning as well. One of the things we know is when a person is in a calm state, there is something like, they think around 260 different variations of decisions they can make at any given time about whatever's happening. As you get more, as your nervous system gets excited and ramps you up, the more you get ramped up, the less your cognitive functioning works. And the reason for that is because you're going into fight or flight, which if you're in that really, completely heightened state of there's only basically fight, flight, or freeze as the only options you have, you don't need your cognitive functioning in the same way. So the body's trying to utilize resources for this perceived threat in a way that makes the most sense. And you don't have to figure out some complicated problem when you're being chased by a wild animal or when a car is just about to hit you or something. You have to get the heck out of the way or fight whatever's in front of you. The point I'm trying to make is that when we're in this heightened state, it's not just that we're stressed and we're in this heightened state. Our brain doesn't work properly. If we're trying to do whatever the tasks are at our job or the problems we're trying to solve, you're not going to function properly. And I don't think the average person is that aware of that they're stressed and they're overwhelmed and they're trying to get out of this stressful situation by doing more, and their brain's not even working properly. I wanted to add that because we have to get people to calm down and get them into the parasympathetic, the brake of the nervous system gets triggered and then brings you down into a calm place. Now, most people that I've worked with know that typically, and I guess most therapists would do this too, when I'm looking at someone's nervous system, I want to look at it in terms of a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being completely overwhelmed, 1 being almost asleep. You look at that and you often sort of figure out, where am I at? And I would say the average person in a big city who has a family, who has a stressful job, would probably be around 5 or 6 all the time, or a lot of the time. Now the problem could be when you get even more heightened, you're getting into 7, you're getting into 8, you're not going to be able to cope at all with what's coming at you. The point I'm trying to make with all this is that when you identify, the key is when you identify you're in this stressed response state, when you feel yourself escalating even more, the thing you need to do is bring yourself down. So you don't need to do more. You don't need to finish a task or get something done. You need to bring yourself down. And I'm just going to demonstrate right now just a couple little exercises that you can do. One of the things that's often in the stress state that's keeping us really heightened and stressed is we're in our head, we're in our thoughts. As you've probably heard me say before, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I don't have time, I got to get there. We're racing we're in our thoughts. What we need to do in those moments to get clarity is to calm ourselves down. Now, one of the grounding techniques that I suggest to people that I use all the time that help you just give you some clarity is just to, you don't have to do this, but you put your hand on your chest and just breathe in, hold, exhale. Do that a few times. Hold, breathe in, hold. And one of the other things I suggest is people just to add to the grounding is just imagine that your feet have roots that come out that are extending deep into the earth, and kind of you typically close your eyes when you're doing this and just kind of visualize yourself being connected to the earth. That will help you feel grounded. What that does is it brings you out of your head and into your body, which will calm you down, but it also gives you mental clarity. So you can start to look at whatever's going on and maybe use some strategy. Like, what is the thing I have to do right now that can't wait? What are the things that can wait, etc. That's a quick way to do that. To be honest, I do that often when I'm driving, sometimes in the city, because I don't close my eyes. But I find sometimes at certain times of the day, traffic's not really a problem in a sense for me. It doesn't stress me out. But cars weaving in and out and racing and passing on the inside lane, crisscrossing, these sorts of things, just heightens my system. And so what I like to do then is just ground myself, and then it's fine. Then it's interesting because normally I'm kind of frustrated by the way these people are driving. When I calm myself down, it doesn't faze me. I'm just driving. The other thing I wanted to talk a bit about is to go into a bit more detail is that's a quick way to bring yourself out of your head, but it's not going to have an effect that's going to last for very long. If your thinking is very activated and you're stressed, you're just going to start thinking about things that are stressing you and get more heightened again. What I want people to try to do is if they have more time, try to do this for at least 4 minutes. Ideally, I like people to meditate, and my YouTube channel has a number of meditations you can try. I'm just going to go through some breathing right now. If you're very stressed, there's a way of breathing that will bring it triggers your parasympathetic, which is the brake of your nervous system to calm you down. It triggers it to happen much quicker. That one, it looks kind of odd, but you're sort of breathing in, say for 4, breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and then when you exhale as strongly as you can for as long as you can. So you've got no air left. If you do that a few times, you'll realize that it's triggering the vagus nerve, which is triggering the parasympathetic nervous system. And if I do it a couple times, I actually feel a bit lightheaded. So that's one if you're really stressed and you want to sort of bring yourself down quickly. But if you're just trying to do it as like a morning or an evening exercise or something like that, then try the different variations. There's 4-4-4, there's 4-7-8, there's different types of breathing. And what those mean is like breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, wait 4, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. I mean, for the purpose of this video, I'm speeding it up. The other one I like is the 4-7-8. In for 4, count to 7, and then exhale for 8. And then start that again. There's a number of different breathing, but the point is, and I know not everybody likes meditation. I'm a big fan of meditation, and I'm going to go into some stuff in a minute about that. But even the deep breathing exercises, if you don't want to do that, close your eyes when you're doing them, will bring your nervous system down, will reduce stress, and maybe it'll get you more open to the idea of meditation. The thing, and I'm just going to go a bit into some of the challenges with meditation right now, is that most people struggle with their attention. We all do. Our thoughts are going different places. You try to close your eyes and start to meditate, and your mind's going here and mind's going there. And it takes a lot of time to train yourself to get better at that. I'm just going to give some pointers here on that. What we do when we meditate then is we use our breath and we focus on our breath, and we call it an anchor. So it becomes something that our attention can focus on. And this really helps with, being distracted. And if you do get distracted, then just simply bring yourself back to your breath. You're closing your eyes, you're breathing in through the nose, hold out through the mouth, and you're just focusing on how that feels to bring it in through your nose, how it feels to hold it, how it feels to release it as you're doing the meditation. Now, typically people would start with a guided meditation where there's a voice telling you, do this, do this. But I'm just trying to help people, because this is the number one objection I get all the time, is like, oh, my mind's just kind of all over the place. Keep bringing yourself back to your breathing. Keep bringing your mind back to focus on your breathing. And that provides an anchor for your attention. Now, it's not perfect. You'll still drift away. But I don't want you to drift away and then get frustrated with yourself and then, I can't do this. Just gently bring yourself back to your breath. It happens to me all the time. And I don't get upset about it. I just like, I'm over here thinking about tomorrow. And I just gently bring myself back and just continue. And that might happen to me 2 or 3 times when I'm meditating. And I just keep gently bringing myself back. Now, one of the things we do in mindfulness is we look at one of the skills we learn is to look at our thoughts as clouds floating by. If I'm having a panicked thought or a stressful thought or an uncomfortable thought, I learn skills to be able to kind of observe the thoughts. I know they're there, but I'm not responding to them emotionally. I'm not like, oh my gosh. I'm more just observing them. Maybe like wondering, why am I having that thought? And so this is very helpful. The key thing I want to stress in this video is your breath is such an incredible resource to bring your nervous system down. Deep breathing, most people know this, but deep breathing done on a regular basis, utilized as a coping skill, will help you get clarity. It will help take you out of your head. If you're arguing with your partner and you get triggered by something they said, you can ground yourself, you can take a moment, and you can think clearly. And this is one of the things, of course, that even happens in conflict. People are in their head, they're triggered, they're defensive. They're not thinking like, this is the person I love that I'm in a relationship with. I don't want to say mean things to this person. I don't want to like hurt their feelings. But in that stressed, kind of heightened conflict, I probably will. Learn how to bring this is an incredible way to calm yourself down, to bring yourself down so you can have some mental clarity. I don't think people really understand sometimes, or it's talked about enough really, that it's not just about not being stressed. It's about the mental clarity and the ability to look at, because what we know is that when you're in fight or flight, your focus narrows to, it's the same thing if you're in conflict. Someone could say, Jim, I've never liked you. And then all I can think about is this comment and how that feels. And I've got laser focus, narrow focus on that one comment. I'm not thinking about how hurt the person is, or how upset they are, or how stressed they've been, or any of these kind of things, or how long we've been friends, or whatever it is. If I'm in a calm place, I tend to be, we call it a sort of like an overview. If I'm calm, I'm looking at the future, the past, the present. I'm like looking at it and weighing things and getting a different perspective. And that's one of the biggest problems with the stress response, is our focus is so narrow that it's like, that's all I can see is this small area, and I don't have any clarity. I'm losing, as I would say, often the bigger picture, especially with couples and families. We're losing the bigger picture of, we love each other, we're in a family together. This type of comments, these types of responses is not helping anyone. Anyways, and keep in mind that our thoughts and how our thoughts are formed about specific things will create the threat for our brains. If I have a meeting in the morning and I'm overwhelmed with anxiety over doing a presentation, my mind and my system is looking at that as a threat. So I'm in a stress response. And I don't have time in this to go into how to manage anxiety too, but this type of grounding yourself in your body will help with anxiety, it'll help with anger, it'll help with just about anything. If you're in your head, try this to just ground yourself in your body. I do this all the time. And one of the questions I get constantly from people is, how do you do what you do? Well, this is how I do what I do. I practice mindfulness, I meditate, I ground myself almost continually through the day and get myself out of my head and into my body, so I can be calmer and I can have some clarity.